Good afternoon and welcome to Go Beyond. My name is Alyssa Robinson and Pastor Daniel is off today. So I am here with Reverend Dr. Nick McCrae, who gave our message on Sunday. And so he is joining me. Welcome to the studio experience of Go Beyond.
Thank you. I feel like I'm not fancy enough to be in here. It's got a really chic, kind of rugged aesthetic to it. Its light bulbs are awesome. This chalkboard is awesome. This is great.
So Go Beyond is simply a time that we dig deeper into the message from Sunday. And so since you gave us the message this Sunday, I wanted to ask you some questions. But first, you posed some questions this week in the Huddle Guide that we're going to dive into. And if y'all are watching with us, you can access the Huddle Guide. There is a link in this video, either above me, below me, to the side of me, depending on where you're watching. So click into that link, follow along with our Huddle discussion, and I'll just go ahead and jump right into it. The first question is a doozy. I feel like it's a very vulnerable question. So when have you been aware of a need for strength beyond your own?
And I appreciate that question that I wrote. No, just kidding. Well, because, and actually, it is a vulnerable question, but, the first place I would go to would be one of the things I talked about in the message this Sunday, which was, and I shared this during the message for those who haven't been able to see it yet, is that honestly preaching for me is one of the areas that I just really feel like I run up against the limit of my own strength every time. I'm kind of tempted to think, I got this, I can do this all on my own. I got this skills, I got this experience, I can do this. And every time it is a huge struggle for me. And you can ask my wife, Annie. I mean, it's like, she knows when it's leading up to time for me to preach, because I'm just like beating my head against the wall. And I've learned, and I hope to keep learning to do this more readily. But I've learned that the only way for me to do it, to really have a word to say to the people from God, is to admit that, okay, I can't do this on my own. I have to call out to God in prayer. I have to seek God and just follow God. I mean, who knows what will come out of my mouth? Maybe nothing. I might just stare at the people or the camera, as it were, and then just run away. I don't know what would happen, but.
Well, and I think that my problem is my arrogance of like, I see myself as a very strong person. I think I can handle a lot. And so it's not always my first reaction to admit, this is something I can't do on my own. But I'll say that for me, many people are aware. In 2019, I went through a pretty gnarly divorce that took everything out of me and completely redefined the way that I looked at myself, redefined the way that I viewed my relationship with God. But although it was one of the hardest times of my life and was absolutely a time that I had to admit, I can't do this on my own. I need help, not just from God, but literally, like, I need somewhere to live. Yeah. I need my friends to support me. Like, I need help from the church. Like, all of these things that I had never had to admit before, I had to admit. And I will say, I sometimes miss that point in my life because it was the most spiritual growth and fulfillment I have ever experienced, of being able to let go and say, I need help. I'm not strong enough to do this on my own. And I wish I could do that more easily and access that more easily, but it's hard for me because like I am hard-headed and stubborn and I want to do everything on my own. And I want, nobody would guess that about me. But yeah, I think for me, that is the standout time that I had to admit I'm not strong enough.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that. And that's a theme that I think, that I've seen. I think other people have seen that. I know other people have seen this, that people go through those really dark, really dark moments, really difficult moments in their lives. I mean, in some ways it can be a dark night of the soul, to use an expression that has several different meanings, but the gift in that is that so often I see that people will come through those and they'll have exactly what you said. They learned in some way to rely more fully on something outside of themselves, whether that is God in the case of people of faith, and then even in people who are not people of faith, learning to rely on other people And of course, people of faith can rely on other people as well. But you know what I'm saying? This is just a human thing. We grow and learn so much when we can recognize our limitations and step outside of ourselves and reach out to someone else, to power beyond ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. So we were specifically focusing on fasting for strength. And of course, the first step is admitting I'm weak. I need the strength. But how do you think you can incorporate fasting for strength into your spiritual practice?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, not only because you gave me a preview of the questions, but because
you wrote the question?
Right, because that's true. Because I wrote the question, and when I first saw them, I'd forgotten that I had written them, and I was like, wow, these are
great questions.
These are exactly the kind of questions I would have asked. Well, that's because I wrote them for the Huddle Guide. But to answer your question, so what I'm thinking about doing is, so of course I am well, not of course, but I am participating in the Lenten fast that we're doing here during this time of Lent, and I'm beginning to think about, I can do this at other times as well. Like for instance, I can imagine, let's say I have something coming up that I know that I'm not gonna be able to do. Like I'm thinking I'm preaching in the future. I don't preach every week at this point, but when I know that it's coming up, I wonder, what if I did just reestablish another fast and say, God, I'm going to abstain from this, whatever it may be, for this time, so that I can begin sort of that preparation of trusting in you and leaning on you as leading up to this time. And I'm really excited to see what kind of fruit that might bear in terms of if maybe it's easier or I can more readily turn to God and more readily sort of not just think that I can just knock it out because it should be easy. Maybe that, I don't know. I'm really excited to try that out.
Well, what if the fasting itself is something you're not strong enough to do?
Right.
Because I'll be honest, I have been struggling with my fast. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned this to Daniel last week that I'm still maintaining, my fast has been not watching TV until 10 a.m. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to do it, but the last week or so, have I been replacing that time with God? No, because I have been replacing it with things I need to get done. And I'm like, oh, my mornings have just opened up to run all of my errands, and I think I need to refocus my fasting. And I need the strength to do it. Like I feel like I'm too weak to even do my fast and make it meaningful, because this is my first time experiencing fasting for a really long time and trying to make it more God-centered and more meaningful. And I have felt like I've started failing the last week. So I don't really know how to get back on track other than, I don't know, I guess ask God for help.
Yeah.
Admit that I'm too weak.
Step one. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. Another things that come to mind is a lot of us are doing these fasts together. We have different fasts, but there's a real opportunity for having accountability with other people. Now, that doesn't always solve the problem, but sometimes taking that extra step, which once again is an extra step, having to do something else, but taking that extra step to have someone that you're partnered with, that we're gonna support each other. We're gonna check in with each other about it. So that's one possibility. Another thing I would say is, we fall off the wagon, whatever it may be. People fall off the wagon, or people don't. We set out with these great intentions, and sometimes we mess up. It's not an all or nothing game, right? It's not. I slip one time from the thing I've just committed to do, and now it's all over. The fact is, every day is a new opportunity to pick ourselves up and try again, and maybe just change the way we think and saying to let God pick me up, and just take another step. And so these might sound like cliches, but some things are cliches because they're true. Taking one day at a time, picking yourself up and starting all over again. I mean, that's the only way, I think, just as humans, to keep moving forward with anything, because we have a hard time sticking to the things that we commit to do for a lot of different reasons.
Well, and I think I definitely get caught up in the all or nothing approach.
Me too.
And the strength, I guess I saw the strength as like, oh, being able to do all of this without making a mistake means that I'm strong. But the real strength is when you mess up, being able to get back up again
Right. Yeah. Because I think that there's a lot of different emotions or things that can go into that sort of feeling like, well, if I mess up once, it's all over. And one of those is pride, to be quite honest. For me, it is anyway. To say that like, well, I don't know that it can kind of wound our pride to say, I said I was going to do this thing, and now I've messed up, um, so yeah, it's a learning, once again, a learning opportunity. A lot of times they don't feel good. These kind of learning opportunities. Anyway.
Well, speaking of the things that don't feel good, my last question today, and this was one of the ones that I wrote.
Yep.
How do we begin recognizing the areas in which we're weak? Because I feel like the first step to admitting, God, I need your help, I'm not strong enough, is admitting the areas that we're weak. And sometimes that's easier said than done because we get so caught up in the hamster wheel of life. We just keep going and going and going and don't stop to think about where we need to let some things go. And so how do you start to pinpoint, hey, here are the areas that I'm weak?
Well, for me, sometimes it makes itself very obvious because it's like I'm beating my head against the wall. I've been trying, let's say, to use my example of preaching, I've been striving at this thing for hours and hours and hours, and now it's almost time, and it's almost too late, and I still got nothing. That never feels good, but those are very obvious, right? So in some ways, those are great because it's like it's very clear to me now what I have to do. But yeah, but ideally we want to see that earlier, right? And that's a great question. I really think that just knowing ourselves or coming to know ourselves a little bit better can help us to see those things earlier. So, for instance, you and I talk about the Enneagram a lot. I'm sure Enneagram was talked about around the church a lot because it's something that's found to be a very useful tool. I have found that knowing myself better through the Enneagram has helped me to know where I'm likely to find these places of resistance, to find these places of weakness, and to kind of preemptively, it's part of who I am for whatever reason. I'm a 9 on the Enneagram. If anybody other 9s out there, you're probably a procrastinator too.
We could have some really fun conversations as a 9 and an 8 on the
They're
Enneagram.
so close together, yet so far away in some ways. But knowing that about myself, now it doesn't mean that I can always effectively preempt it, but I just go into that awareness. It's like I have to put things in place to give myself the opportunity to not fall into that. Doesn't mean I always do, but that's just one example of the ways that getting to know ourselves better can help us to begin to identify those things. And also listening to other people, when they tell us things that we don't want to hear sometimes. Yeah. Like, well, hey, we really need you to work on this,
Yeah, and on that, same track as an 8 on the Enneagram, one of my weaknesses is neglecting feelings, completely disregarding feelings, my own and other people's. Mm-hmm. Like, if you come to me with a decision based in feeling and not on data or not on, something that I deem to be more substantial, then I disregard it. And that's unfair. And not only is it unfair that I do that to other people, but it's unfair that I do that to myself. And so because I make the mistake of viewing feelings and vulnerability in and of themselves being a weakness, and they're not, they're a strength. Now that's something very heady and difficult to overcome. I'll have to, I'm in therapy, so we're working through that. But yeah, I think knowing yourself as a first step to better understanding your weaknesses, always focusing inward of how can I improve will help you love yourself better and love other people better.
Yeah, absolutely right. And then the other piece to that, I would say, is developing, and once again, this is gonna be one of those things that we have a weakness getting to, but really just developing that relationship with God, the consistent prayer, consistent time spent with God. Sometimes that's the thing we're struggling toward, but still, because we can know ourselves, even if we know ourselves completely, we can still be missing something because we might be missing what God is doing, what God is inviting us to do that might be different from our own plans or our own preferences or whatever. And so, yeah, it's kind of a twofold thing, like knowing yourself and then just spending that time in relationship with God to know God better. and it takes time. There's no easy fix. There's no, sort of, I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to have a good relationship with God starting today, because you're going to fall off the wagon. Everybody does. Even the most spiritual person in the world has unspiritual days.
Well, and I think that's what I fell into with my fast is I was, devoutly reading my scripture and doing my prayer time and my meditation time every morning. And I was like, nothing's happening. Like nothing's changing. But that's not what it's about.
Right. But you're also, I would push back, say, and this is just sort of, and to say that, but you were discovering something about yourself. You were coming to know that
impatience isn't
right,
a weakness.
That you're coming to know that. You're coming to know that about, and you're coming to see a place where you need help. And so, even when nothing's happening, and sometimes you need another voice. And once again, I want to. I've talked about spiritual direction several times, not in this, but in other things. Having a spiritual director, which is essentially a person who does those questions and says, "Well, now what I hear you saying is, and have you considered what God is doing in that?" I mean, that's made a huge difference for me. We have some spiritual directors in our congregation who I'm sure would be willing to sit with people and be that companion. But yeah, sometimes I just need someone else to say to me, "I hear you, but have you considered?" So spiritual direction, I can't recommend it enough.
Well, that is all the time that we have today. So thank you, Pastor Nick, for joining me on Go Beyond. He will be with me again on Wednesday as we dive a little deeper into the book of Esther, which is one of the most fascinating books in the Bible. And so I hope that you'll join us again on Wednesday at 12:30 for another episode of Go Beyond. And as always, you can catch all previous episodes at tmumc.org/gobeyond. Thank you, Pastor Nick.
Thanks. See y'all.